Hey everyone, this is Mr. Rambo here. Today I'm going to take you through the process of setting up a Google Doc. So the first step is when you're in your Google Drive, you can access this through your email. In the upper right hand corner, you'll hit the grid button here, the Google Apps, and you'll look for the one called Drive. You will then click that to open your Drive, which you'll see anything that you have created. It might be blank if you're a new student with us and haven't created anything here in Google Drive yet. So your first step in creating a document is to hit this blue button in the top left-hand corner. It is called New. When you press New, you'll scroll down and you'll look for the one called Google Docs. If you ever used Microsoft Word, Google Docs is very similar, so it won't be too tough of a transition for you. The first thing we are going to complete when we have a Google Doc open is to first give it a title. If you don't give your Google Doc a title, it's just going to stay with the untitled document. Um, you don't want to leave it as an untitled document because you don't want your drive to be filled with Google Docs called untitled document. You're not going to know which one is which. And it is very important to give it a unique, distinguishing name so that you can refer to it very easily if you ever need to go back and open it. So I'm going to call ours for the purpose here. So I'm going to say like it's the beginning of the school year. I'm going to say mine's Unit 1, Lesson 1. Let's call it History just because I'm the history teacher here. And one important thing you'll see here, as I just titled it, it saved. It said all changes saved in Drive. So for those of you who have used like Microsoft Word or things in the past, you would have to press like File Save. Whenever you do something in a document here, it automatically saves it. So you don't have to worry about like, did you save it before you closed out, or if your computer turned off, did it get saved? Everything automatically saves on any change that you make. So I want to go through the toolbar here, show you the basics. Starting from our upper left-hand corner, we're looking at this is the print button, something that you probably won't have to use very often at all because most of our assignments will be turned in online. The next two arrows here are your undo and redo. So if you type something in and you deleted it but decided you want it back, you can hit like the redo and bring it back, or you can hit undo to make any changes that you want to take away. So I'm going to type in a sample sentence here, and I'm going to decide that I don't want to undo that. I don't want to write the word sample sentence. So clicking undo and clicking it twice took away that word. But if I decide I wanted to bring it back, I can hit the redo arrows and bring that sentence back. One other thing I want to mention when you are typing here is if you make any grammatical error, say I typed the word sentence incorrectly, if you just saw the red squigglies just came up below the word sentence, that means the word is spelled incorrectly. What you can do to correct this is to right click on the word. So hover your mouse over the word sentence, right click, and then look for it says, did you mean sentence? And it'll give you that spelling. We should be making sure we are correcting all grammatical mistakes in our work to gain as much credit as possible in our assignments here. So it's something we should all be using, and it takes 2 seconds. You go through your document, you look for those red lines underneath the word, go back and correct those words so that your document and whatever you're writing for your particular class does make sense. All right, moving on. Our next tool here, the paint format. Not something also how we use here a lot. It's going to use it when you put like insert like a drawing or a picture, something of that sort here. Our next one here is our zoom. So if the words are looking kind of small on your screen, you can zoom in. You'll see the page size kind of change. Like I'm going to hit fit first. So it blew up my. If you think about it as like a sheet of paper, it blew up my sheet of paper exactly to the width of my screen. And you can change the sizes. You can go all the way from 200. You can be zoomed in a lot or zoom all the way back up to 50%. A good mix is just right around 100% is what I keep mine at. The next drop-down window here is your text. So this is looking at things like your title, your heading, and any other options under that. So this will be used more in your English classes or your language arts classes where you might be writing a paper, where for the top you might have a title, and you might want to make that title a different size. And you can do that with that feature. So I change my sample sentence to the title size, and then I would, and I'll show you this tool a little bit more, I would center align my sample sentence word here because it is the title. and you can switch that back to normal text and have that written in there. Most times you will use, going into our next buttons here, the default font in most of your classes. So the Arial 11 is your standard size. That's perfectly acceptable for turning in work in all classes. If you do need to change this, some of them require things like Times New Roman, which is the other like default option on this. You can use that for some of your English papers. So I'm going to change mine to Times New Roman there. And I'll change the size. Often they make it 12-point font for that. You do have options to change your text to other things, but don't go crazy. Make it readable for your teacher. Like turning in something like this, a little bit of a headache for your teacher to read, and is not as clearly written, as clearly readable as the other fonts. So try to stick with those top two, the Times New Roman or Arial fonts there. So I'm going to go back to Times New Roman. Your next four tools here are modifying the text still. You can bold your text, that's the solid B. Italicize is the I, so that makes it kind of slant to the right. Underline is the next one, the U. And the final one is changing the color. This is something you shouldn't have to do too much either, unless you're doing some creative type of like art project in a Google Doc. So black will always be your default. Try to leave it with that when you're turning in like science work, math work, social studies work. English, they might ask you to change it sometimes, but must be black, but you can change the color if you're doing something more creative. I'm going to switch mine back to black here. Our next tool, so insert a link. So it looks like a chain link here. So this will allow you to attach like a website to text in your Google Doc here. So I'm going to do mine. So you're going to highlight, to do this process, highlight the words you want to be linked. And when you have them highlighted, you're going to click the insert link button. And then you're going to either have a website that you either copied from another tab that you want to use, or write in your own. So I'm going to put ours to YouTube. I'm going to youtube.com. You can also search it. It brings it up. I can now link YouTube to those words. So if I share this document to you and you're reading it, you could click those words and it'll take you to YouTube. So it is a very handy feature. And then some of the tools I mentioned earlier are your types of align. You have 4 types of align. So your default, and which we use most of the time, is the left align. It aligns everything to the left side of your paper, just like you're writing on a sheet of paper. Your next one here is your center align tool. This is useful for things like titles. And the next two you won't use very much or even at all is the right align, running it to the right side of the page, or center justify, where it'll keep everything tabbed equally. So let's usually keep that default to left align there. All right, almost through these. Our next one here is changing your line spacing. So say I have written a full sentence and I'm continuing on to the second. I'm just going to add an extra line here and say, my work for this class is, but I want to change the spacing in it a little bit. I want some more space between the sentences, the gaps, the lines there. So using this, you can change it from single, which will tighten it up, as I highlight it first. Single, which will tighten it up more, and you'll see I'll go to the opposite extreme. Double, which will push it away a lot more. So this can be useful in when you're writing to take some visual strain off your eyes. Some teachers will also assign, especially like in your language arts class, to what your spacing should be. It's usually set to around 1.5 or 1.15 for that setting. Now, I wrote my work for this class is ... So I'm going to go into our next tool here, which will create a list. So I need to write out a list of the work that I need to do. So I'm going to hit, you can either use a numerical list, which shows you the 1, 2, 3 here, or I can use a bulleted list, which just gives you like blocks and circles. So I'm going to go with a numbered list. And first I'm going to do my class list is, I'm going to hit return so I can go under it and then start my list. So it indents your list so it knows it's coming under my work for this class. And I'm going to say, go to class. And then I'm going to say, do homework. And that's how those tools will work. These two tools you won't use at all, the indent or increase indent, but please do indent when you are writing paragraphs. So if I'm writing a new paragraph, I want to indent and say, my writing. So those are the most useful tools here in our